Good morning. I am Satish Kumar Gupta, Assistant Professor, IIMT College of Law, Greater Noida. Today I will discuss about the classical thinker Emile Durkheim, his work, his contribution in the sociology. So we can here see that the born and died of the Emile Durkheim. He born in 15 April 1858 and died on November 15, 1917. If you see the biological background of the Emile Durkheim, in 1887, he started his teaching career in Bordeaux to teach pedagogy and social science to as a new teacher. In 1885 to 86, he spent a year studying psychology with Wilhelm Wundt in Berlin. In 1893, he published his first books, The Division of Labor in Society. Through this work, he completed his PhD. In 1895, published The Rule of Sociological Method and founded the European Department of Sociology at the University of Bordeaux. In 1896, founded a Journal of LLB Sociologie, the first journal of sociology in France. Further, in 1897, he published Suicide, and in 1902, awarded the prominent position in Paris as the chair of education at the Sorbonne. In 1912, published Elementary Form of Religious Life. His position became permanent and renamed it the chair of education and sociology. Lastly, he suffered a stroke of Paris in 1917, briefly recovered and resumed work, but later that year, on November 15, he died at the age of 59 from exhaustion. If we see the basic premises of his work, that Emile Durkheim was interested to know how do society maintain order in the system of hierarchy, and how to deal with society disorder and chaos, and what are those processes that help in keeping people together. Further, he discussed social phenomena as sui generis. He told about that the society is a sui generis, which means that which is its own unique being to understand the structure of society. And social phenomena is an outcome of our interaction that happen in our day-to-day life. If you see that what is a social phenomena, that he described the social phenomena is external to oneself, and it is not derived from biological or psychological understanding. They endure over time. Coercive endowment on a society, the will of an individual is not important. So he defined that the society or the social fact is coercive and external from the individual or human being. So he defined that the coercive means that through law, policy, and legal action. Durkheim divided in his theory into themes. If we see the themes, that there are two main themes in the work of Emile Durkheim. So that sociology is distinguished from psychology. The first theme is the priority of the social over the individuals. And the first is the idea that society can be studied scientifically. So his basic agenda that the society is, he always focus or give priority to the society, not the individual. His main theme, his main focus upon the society, because he know that the society is a supreme power, supreme authority. And second one is the idea that society can be studied scientifically. And he in his study that the mostly focus upon the how we can study our society through scientifically or science. For the society gradually influence how you think, what to think, etc. Society institutionalizes the idea, thus individuals think accordingly. Society is supreme, it governs the behavior. Durkheim argued that sociology should be oriented toward empirical research. Basically, his focus based upon the empirical research. And lastly, threatened by the philosophical social within sociology itself. So in the this section, we can see that the contribution and theory of the Emile Durkheim. So here the four books are main important of the Emile Durkheim. So here we can see that the Emile Durkheim's Suicide, Emile Durkheim's work, The Division of Labor in Society, and further the book is formed and the religious means elementary forms of religious lives. The originally is in the French language, but if you convert in the English, that the name is the elementary forms of religious life. So if you see that his contribution, that he sought to construct one of the first scientific approach to social phenomena, so that traditional society were held together by the fact that everyone was more or less the same. Along with Herbert Spencer, he was one of the first to conceptualize the idea of social functionalism. He basically his almost theory based upon the theory of functionalism. Functionalism view that society as a system of interdependent part whose function contribute to the stability and survival of the system as a whole, and through the society was more than the sum of its part, and coined the term as social fact. So he coined the term social fact. Social fact means that have existence all their own and not are bound on the action of individual. So further, if you see the further contribution of the Emile Durkheim, that he believed that education serve many functions to reinforce social solidarity, pleading elegance, make individuals feel part of a group, and therefore less likely to break rules, to maintain social roles. School is a society, is a miniature. He described that it is a similar hierarchy, rules, expectation to the outside world, and train people to fulfill roles. Further, to maintain division of labor, school sorts students into skill groups, encouraging students to take up employment in the field of best suited to their abilities. Further, he described that along with sociology, he was trained to pedagogy and concluded that institution of the public education was a necessary replacement for religion and in a secular society. If we see the further contribution of the Emile Durkheim, we can see in the anomy. He described that anomy is the breakdown of social norms regulating behaviors. Durkheim and other sociological theorists coined the term anomy as a reaction against or retreat from the social control of society. All deviant behavior stem from a state or anomy, include suicide. Further, Durkheim describe on the crime that crime serve as social function, meaning that it has a purpose in society. He saw crime as being able to release certain social tension and so have a cleansing or purging effect in society. His view on crime were unconventional at the time. If we see the social fact, what is the social fact? He described that according to Durkheim, we can see the social fact are those subject of matter of sociology. Social fact are sui generis, meaning of its own kind and unique, and must be studied at distinct from biological and psychological phenomena. A social fact can hence be defined as every way of acting, fixed or not, capable of exercising on the individual and external constraint. Social fact can be defined as pattern of behavior that are capable of exercising some coercive power upon individuals. They are internalized in the consequence of individuals. These constraints provide us more obligation and the social fact control us. They are guided and control of conduct and are external to the individual in the form of norms, modes, and folkways. And in this sense, society is something beyond us and something is in ourselves. A social fact is identifiable through the power of external coercion which it exerts or is capable of exerting upon individual. That means basically he is focused upon the how the social fact work in the society, and the social fact means that the through beyond the society, beyond means the which is the external to the individuals and coercive upon the individuals. Further, we can see the types of social fact. He defined that the differentiate between two types of social fact: material and non-material social fact. Material social fact are such type of architecture, form of technology, and legal codes. They are directly observable. More importantly, these material social fact often express a far larger and more powerful realm of moral forces. Further, Durkheim saw social fact along a continuum of materiality. The most material facts are population, size, and density channels, or communication and housing arrangements. Durkheim called this fact morphological, and they figure most importantly in his first book, The Division of Labor in Society. Further, we can see that non-material social fact. Non-material social fact is the Durkheim recognized that non-material social fact are the to certain extent found in the mind of individual. That is when people begin to interact in complex ways, their interaction will obey laws all their own. Durkheim understands non-material social fact through materiality bureaucracy, for example, which is a mixture of morphological component and non-material social fact, such as the bureaucratic norms. Durkheim focused more on non-material social fact. He has given 4 types of non-material social fact: morality, collective consciousness, collective representation, and social currents. If we see the collective consciousness of the social fact that Durkheim developed that idea of collective consciousness in French, the word consciousness means both consciousness and moral consciousness. The totality and of beliefs and some sentiments common to every citizen of the same society form a determinate system which has its own life. One way call it the collective or common consciousness. It is thus an entirely different thing from particularly consciousness, although it can be realized only through them. Further, it is not just a reflection of material base, or as Marx sometimes suggested, it refers to the general structure of shared understanding. Durkheim employed this concept to argue that primitive society had a stronger collective consciousness that is more shared understanding, norms, belief, and than modern. Further, we can see the collective representation by the Emile Durkheim. Durkheim dissatisfaction about broad and amorphous concept of collective consciousness led him to work on more concrete concept, collective representation. In French, word representation means idea. Durkheim used the term to refer the both a collective concept and social force. For example, religious symbols, myths, and popular legend represent collective beliefs, norms, and value, and they motivate us to conform to these collective claims. Further, we can see the Abraham Lincoln word in 1944 function in American society as collective representation that allow people to think about themselves as American. Lastly, we can see that the social current of social fact means this means that the social fact which do not represent themselves in crystallized form, Durkheim called them the social current. For example, the great waves of enthusiasm or indigenization and pity, they are less concrete than other social facts. They have coercive power upon us. Social current can be seen as a set of meaning that are shared by member of collectivity. They can only be explained intersubjectivity, that is in terms of interaction between individuals. Social current are modes that vary from the collectivity to another. Further, in the next slide, we can see that the division of work of the Emile Durkheim, the famous work of Emile Durkheim, the division of labor in society. So, in his work, the division of society has been called sociology's first classic. Durkheim traced the development of modern relation between individual and society. In the division of labor in society, Durkheim examined how social order was maintained in different type of society. Traditional society were held together by the fact that everyone was mostly similar to one another. The collective consciousness is highly isomorphic with individual consciousness. In modern society, the highly complex division of labor resulted in people with a different occupational specialization. This created dependency that tied people to one another, since no one person could fill all of his or her needs by themselves. Increasing division of labor leads to rapid change in society. This can produce a state of confusion regarding norms and growing impersonality in social life. This in turn may lead to breakdown in the norm of regulating behavior and sense of autonomy. Further, we can see the social solidarity. Durkheim was interested in how society are held together, how its members see themselves as part of that whole. Durkheim gave two types of social solidarity, mechanical and organic solidarity. In the mechanical solidarity, the bond among people is that they are all engaged in similar activity and have similar responsibility. It has a more collective consciousness. A strong system of common belief characterizes mechanical solidarity in primitive society. The second one is the organic solidarity, means the difference among people held them together by the fact that all the different tasks and responsibility. Organic society have a weak collective consciousness. Further, in the division of labor, Durkheim expressed that although he believed that the society changed from mechanical to organic solidarity through dynamic density. The concept referred to the number of people in society and the amount of interaction that occur among them. Problems associated with dynamic density are resolved through differentiation and ultimately the new form of social organization. Increases in the division of labor create greater efficiency, making the competition more peaceful. Further, Durkheim's main interest was in the form of solidarity, means the non-material social fact. In the division of labor in society, Durkheim studied the difference between repressive law and restitutive law. In the repressive law, Emile Durkheim focus upon the society with mechanical solidarity follow repressive law because they tend to believe very strongly in common morality. Any offense against their shared value system is likely to be of significance to them. For example, theft might lead to cutting off offender's hand. Further, we can see the restitutive law, the second law. That means the society with organic solidarity follow restitutive law. In such society, crime is said to be committed against individuals rather than moral system beliefs. Further, in the society, the second work, the third work, we can see the third work of Emile Durkheim, Suicide in 1897. In his work, Suicide, Emile Durkheim defined that the act of severing social relationship. Durkheim's goal was to show that an individual act is actually the result of social factors, thus the relevance of the sociological perspective. A key was to degree of social integration, the integration of a group of people in the mainstream of society. He observed that abnormally high or low level of social integration may result in increased suicide rates. He explored the differing suicide rate among the differing social group. Result he found include suicide rate are higher for widow, single or diverse people rather than those who are married. Rates are among higher for those who have no children rather than those who do. Rates are higher among Protestant than Catholic. Corners or Catholic country are less likely to record suicide as the reason of death because of Catholic in it is seen. So we can see that in his work of Emile Durkheim, in the work of Suicide, Emile Durkheim described that he basically focused upon he defined that the society is not an individual perspective, and it is a social fact. He defined that the society is also a social fact, and it is a constant and external to the individual. And the second thing, he didn't blame that if any individual come to suicide, that the wrong fault of the individual, but basically he defined that if any individual come to suicide, that means the society is a whole responsible for the committed of any individual suicide. Apart from this, in his work Suicide, he using approach of comparative study approach, using comparative study approach for the understanding suicide, and he defined the suicide into the rates. So here we can see the key concept in suicide. That suicide was just already I told about the suicide was a social fact, and further suicide was to explain by another social fact. And ML, the anomy division of labor, left over from division of labor, integration and regulation. So you can see here that he defined the four type of suicide, in which the altruistic, egoistic, anomic, and fatalistic suicide. And further, we can already talk about the anomy. So here we can see that the suicide as a social fact. Suicide is social fact means suicide rate is a social fact, social cause or social effect. So as I told about that, the Emile Durkheim talk about that the society, if any individual comes to suicide, that means is the whole society is responsible for the committing suicide. Further, he defined that the rates are stable across time, means that he defined that the rates are stable for the time, rates are stable, and sometimes the rates are constant or conflictual. So the time found low rate of suicide when there are low rates of suicide, means then when religious integration is high, when the people's religion integration is too high, means then the Catholic to Protestant, then people come to suicide. When domestic integration is high, means married to unmarried, and when political integration is high, means rural to urban. So here we can see that the Durkheim's argument in suicide, that means the unlike animal, human desire is unlimited. There is no internal check on needs and desire. The passion must be limited, but this must be done by some force exterior to the individual. The exterior force must be community, collective consciousness, because it is the only moral power superior to the individual, the authority of which he accepts. Regulation through collective consciousness is required to ensure that people will accept their position in life. because true social equality is impossible. And lastly, we can see that the anomy occur when society break down or pass through some abnormal crisis. People are not adjusted to the condition forced on them, and social bonds, collective consciousness fail to do work on of regulating. Here we can see that the type of suicide, and we can elaborate the how four type of suicide, in which we can see that the here define that suicide may be caused by weak social bond. Social bond are made up of social integration and social regulation. Durkheim's four type of suicide. First one is Durkheim's four types of suicide. The first one is egoistic suicide. Individual is weakly integrated into society, or ending their life will have little impact on the rest of society. Altruistic suicide means individual extremely attached to the society, and because of this has no real sense of autonomy, but alternatively a freely chosen act of self-sacrifice. Third, we can see that the anomic suicide. Anomic suicide means that a weak social regulation between social norms and individuals, most often brought on by dramatic economic or social change. And the last one, you can see that the fatalistic suicide. That means social regulation is completely imposed upon the individual with no hope of countering the oppressive discipline of the society. The only way to escape is to take one's own life. So here we can see that there are kinds four type of suicide. So we can see that the upon the top level of North Pole, we can see that the altruistic suicide, when the in the individual too much of integration, that the people committed altruistic suicide. That means we can see through the example that the example of that, the most suitable example is that the people who join the army, or the people in the pre-industrial society, the people who are join the war, that are called the altruistic suicide. Means when the people's in the inner people, individuals are integrated with highly integrated or too much integration. And through the South Pole, we can see that the egoistic suicide, when the integration is too low or not enough integration, that called the egoistic suicide. That means the when the people are not integrated with the society or not integrated with the friend circle, that people think himself that the no one are interested me, or no one are giving priority to me, that people committed suicide. So in that sense, the when we can see the not integration or too or very low integration in the human individuals, that is called the egoistic suicide. So from the East Pole, we can see the fatalistic suicide, when we observe the too much of regulation, that people found himself that I am the very live in the very high norms and high rules and regulation, that people thought about that this is my fatal, and that's why he or she committed suicide. And from the West Pole, we can see that the anomic suicide, when there are no enough regulation in the society, then people committed anomic suicide. So in that society, people are thought himself that there are no any regulation, and that my work is not properly happen by properly or on time, that people committed suicide. So here we can see that the type of suicide through the work of Emile Durkheim and Allen and Berger. So through we can see that when the group attachment, means social integration, are high, shared social sentiments, means society in man, then we can see the altruistic suicide, high or strong. And if you see the low or weak attachment or integration, then we can see the egoistic or individualistic. When the see that the behavior regulation or moral regulation, external constraint made in society. So we can see that when the high regulation, so this is a fatalistic society, a hopelessness. And when the low or weak regulation, so we can see that the anomic or meaningless society. And lastly, we can see that the Durkheim's typology of suicide. Here we can see the pictures of Emile Durkheim, how he was look like. So in that slide, we can see broadly that how the individual in the differentiate between industrial society and the pre-industrial society. So here we can see that the anomic or egoistic or fatalistic and altruistic society. So in the industrial society, we can see that the anomic society when the regulation is too weak, and egoistic society when the bonds is too weak. So both are society we can see through the industrial society when there is a very weak regulation and very weak bond. So further we can see that the in the era of pre-industrial society, so in that society we can see the fatalistic and altruistic society. So society. So in that society that the regulation is too strong. So when we found that any society there are regulation is too strong, so that the fatalistic society, when the bonds is too strong, that the altruistic society. So through this slide, we can here see that the various work of the Emile Durkheim